Farmer Q&A. My name is Bridget Barry and I coordinate Farming for Nature. Farming for Nature was set up to inspire and encourage farmers that farm or wish to farm more for nature. And one of the ways we do this is each year we find exemplary farmers that are working alongside nature every day, but also being productive farmers. So tonight we have a Q&A with one of our more recent ambassadors, Colum Ginnelly. And over the period of the next hour, I'll kickstart the event with asking Colum a few questions. But if any of you have any questions for Colum, please put it into the chat box, which you'll see along your banner, and we can ask them as we go along. So on to tonight's session. Colum, thank you so much for joining me. Colum, you are a sheep farmer up in County Mayo. You might just set the scene for us. How did you start in farming yourself?
Well, I'm farming all my life. Actually, father, probably third generation. I'm fourth myself generation. I probably really took over or started farming really when my father died in 95. Father died of heart attack in 95, 58 years of age. That hot summer in 95, I was 21. So it was from then, actually, you'd always be stepping in and out, farming, helping, doing this, doing that. But from that day onwards, that's when I kind of had to take over. And at the time, we had over 500 sheep and 12 cattle at the time. So it was a big thing to go taking on. But as the years progressed, between the help of neighbours and the rest of the family, cut back on, let's say, the sheep and got rid of the cattle because the land didn't suit. So that's it. So we continued on from then, and maybe not changed the breed, but kind of diversified into maybe more some of a kind of a crossbred sheep, not lowland as we say, purebred, but more of a crossbred sheep. Let's say Chevish, Texel, Suffolk, all that Plyn, that type of breed, just to make the lamb worth a bit more, just more valuable lamb for selling at the end of the year, because the mountain lamb really, there was no market for it. So that's how we continued on, and it's progressed on to that, to where we are now. Like, so not a lot has changed, only our age. So it's maybe the knees.
Yeah, the knees. And tell me, for those of us who don't know your farm, can you describe, the land, where exactly you are, and say the amount of land you have and what it looks like for us?
Okay. Well, the land we farm about, give or take, 400 acres of land. Okay, and that's made up of probably 3/4 commonage and the remainder are lowland. When I say lowland, it's we farm between Mulranny and, let's say, Newport, Westport, or anyone. 10 miles from Achill Island, to be precise. Just more people may know Achill Island. So it's the Nephin Beg mountain range we farm on. So there's different areas of mountain within that Nephin Beg range. So you farm the Nephin Beg, the mountains are behind our house. Then you come down onto the lowland, as we say. The lowland wouldn't be great land. Well, not when I say it wouldn't be great land. What I mean is it's made up of peaty type, bog type land. It wouldn't be, you wouldn't outwinter cattle, let's say, on it now. There'd be a lot of poaching, they'd be up to their bellies, and for winter time it gets very, very wet. So we have a lot of that, it's very fragmented out. So some of our land, there's 2 to 3 miles from one field to the other. So it's kind of spread out. And some of them are narrow Rundale stripes. So they're the old, you can see some of the old famine ridges on the land. And then you go down to between better land, as in near the sea. And then we have out onto the islands. So we've land I farm with my mother. So that's what I'm saying, we farm with my mother. And so we've land out on islands as well, and 2 islands, Minishmore and Inishkeel. So they're tidal, so we can walk in and out to them. And that's one thing we don't really, when we're walking sheep out, let's say especially the lowland sheep, we would never have an issue with foot rot in sheep, never have an issue with foot rot. And I often talk to other farmers with lowland sheep or crossbred sheep, they would suffer with foot rot or lameness. We never have that problem because it's the salt water. Salt water is brilliant for feed for sheep and all that. So that's the kind of breakup from it like that. So it's farmed alongside my mother, so she's still the boss. so
Always
that's
will
how it's broke up, and it's very fragmented. So you do a lot of travel. It's not like a lot of farms. You go away from here, maybe up the Midlands or up east south. You go out in the morning, it's all one big block, and you may not have to sit into your Jeep. We do have to, first thing, we have to sit into the Jeep or do something to get to our fields. And the same thing with the hill farming, the hill farming is very vast, very vast. So that's it's
And are you on commonage with the hill farming, or is it just your land up there? Yeah.
Commonage, and there's privately owned as well. So privately owned, we didn't call it commonage. It was commonage, it was divided, and then there's the commonage, as we call it, the bigger areas. So there's a mixture of everything, and then there's a privately owned lowlands that looks like the commonage, is that type of peachy, hilly, heathery type ground as well, which is very important to us, especially for the acres and for the scoring. It scores very well if it's not, let's say, if we can manage it. So it scores very good for us on the acres. That's very important.
Yeah. We'll come to that in a while as well. Just to get a fuller picture of your farm at the moment. So we're in mid-March at the moment. What's happening on your farm? Are you lambing? Are the sheep inside? Are they up in the uplands? Are they down out in the islands? Where
we
are
started
you at?
the hill sheep. The hill sheep are on the hills at the moment, and they are not lambing until the 21st of April. So we pushed them out another week. We'd normally maybe lamb them they normally be lambing on the 14th of April. But now we've pushed them out another week to the 21st, because it's all got to do with, let's say, having something for them to eat grass-wise when they come down. We're very exposed here along the west coast. We have the Atlantic winds coming in. We're right on the water. So we have the Atlantic. We have these, especially this breeze at the moment, this cold breeze that's coming in us at the moment, that stunts the growth. So we wouldn't have grass area like, let's say, the East Coast South, which is maybe slightly warmer soils. So we wouldn't have that. So that's why we pushed out the lambing for the hill farming out to the hill sheep flock out to the 21st of April. Now the lowland flock or the crossbreds, we have some lambs already, but there's always a few mistakes everywhere. But they will be lambing they'll have their lambs the end of March this month. So you could say from the start of next week onwards, they will start to lamb. And they will lamb outdoors. That's the thing. So that's lambing outdoors with any problems or bad nights. Any of them brought indoors, if you know what I mean. So the shed is there for if there's a problem, twins, triplets. So, and we get those scanned. We get the lowland sheep scanned, and the hill sheep, we don't bother to get them scanned. So the lowland sheep scanned about 1.6. So it's pretty good for let's say this area.
Yeah. So you know what you're getting.
Yes, you know
if there's triplets coming, that you have to keep an eye out for them or whatever.
Yeah. Some people say you don't want to see triplets, but listen, a lamb is a lamb, a live lamb is a live lamb. So we know, and each of them are fed accordingly. So it's the twins get more, triplets more, singles less. Singles you nearly get away with very little. It depends what type of, if there's a bit of grass for them.
So you supplement feed?
We supplement feed. You're always giving them something, because on the lowland we have them out on there's a commonage that we do have them out on as well, lower commonage, and but you have to supplement them on that as well. Like you have to give them something. But from now they're getting their ewe and lamb nuts now. From now on, normally about 2 weeks before the lamb, we up it, and to pay up it for the twins, not as much for the singles. You just do what you want to be able for them to lamb a lot easier. So really, nearly all sheep have to be supplemented really here along the west coast here, unless you have very good quality land, unless you have spared. And there's not many people that can spare it, because sheep are the best lawnmowers you'll ever get. So it's get that opportunity. Now there is the other side of lambing indoors has its good points, but if you get good weather like now, and you are lambing outdoors, and the lambs are born, and after a day or two, they're up and running, and really they're as strong as you could be, compared to maybe indoors. You have disease, you have a lot of other things. So apart from that, that's where we are now. So you do have to supplement them, and they probably get a bit of silage as well there. They're not too keen on it. They prefer the hay. So that's it. The hill sheep are different. they can wander, so they can source out better food or whatever suits them. If there's less in one area, they go to another area, so they can source it out a lot easier.
And how often would you have to go up into the hills yourself?
Well, you always go through them. You'll have to, like, someone say, how do you gather the sheep in the hills? And I scratch my head and I say, well, I don't know really, but it's just that it comes to us the morning we're going to gather sheep, it comes to you. But you would do, it depends where they are on the hill. The lower ones you may see more often now. You may see the lower sheep more often because if they get any taste of grass throughout the year, or a bit of feed, they're wanting to come down. There is that want to come down. So a week or two before their lambing, they're getting closer down, and sometimes it can be congregating around the gates, wanting to come down. So that's when you have to kind of take that into consideration. Is there some of them getting thin, or you kind of have to look? So you have to keep an eye on that. But you'd be going up, you'd be checking once a week, anyways, like that. Unless near to lambing, you might check more. But when I say checking, you're not going to be seeing all your sheep. Full stop.
Yeah, fair enough. And tell me, how long do you keep your lambs for? Like, at what stage do you sell them on? Or
well, we sell our. You're talking out September. You're talking out. So we don't, because we're late lambing, we're late selling, and actually we still have a few lambs left from last year. So it's time they were going because there's no break at all really. We have last year's lambs and we have some of this year's lambs, so they should really be gone. But so it's out from September onwards. You may have some earlier, depends. You could have some early. You could have some maybe the end of August. You could have if you want to. But like when you have grass there as well, hold on to them and let them graze it. And let's say a bigger carcass, or a bigger, heavier lamb. And this year lamb prices were very good. Like, so it made a difference, especially for the hill farming.
and was your market in? Do you think your market was in Ireland this year, or was it elsewhere?
Well, the one thing I would say is that the light lamb, the hill lamb, the mountain lamb, well, we have to be very thankful here for, we have two lamb producer groups, the Mayo blackface sheep producers based in Ballinrobe and the INHFA, the Irish Nature Hill Farm Association. So they let's say arrange, or they have range, let's say prices with factories. So we sign up, you pay membership to those. And let's say the likes, if we were going to the factories ourselves with our own lambs, you don't have really bargaining power for a price when you're going to your 20 or 30 lambs or whatever it is. Like, you're only going in there as one person. But when you have a membership, maybe 400 to 500 people, and they're selling, or they're supplying a factory or factories which can be nearly at the peak, nearly 1,000 lambs a week. You have bargaining power there, and we have to be very thankful of them two producer groups. So you're talking French lamb is a heavier lamb. Well, depends how you say heavier. It used to be 15 kilos down to 14. The French prefer the heavier type of lamb, and then you have Spain, Portugal, and there's other little markets for the lighter type. The lighter type from let's say 14 down to, they're killing down to 10 this year, but maybe 12 kilos carcass weight. So they're actually the lamb you prefer yourself is, it's the hill lamb, like the hill lamb, a lamb that's sold or going into the food chain in September, October. You can be sure that it's a lamb that's been fed grass fed compared to a lamb earlier in the year. Like a lamb now that's been sold now, there's not a lot of grass, so you can be sure that that's being supplemented with concentrated food, with meal, compared to a lamb September, October. We'd always say that our lambs taste nicer because they're grazing the hills, or they're grazing the lowlands, or the mahirs, or whatever it is. Just better. We're in no rush to push them on. We're in no rush to push them on. So that's the way.
It's interesting, isn't it? The kind of the market around the spring lamb, when actually you were saying it's the autumn lamb is the one that you should be getting to the butcher for. Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. It's the probably the autumn lamb, and the reason why we say that is because we know it ourselves. We're producing them. That's the reason why. But I don't mind when I go out. The first thing I eat in a restaurant when I go out is lamb. If lamb is on the menu, that's it. That's for me. It's looked at as a high-end meat or high-end food, and sometimes it's the first food or first meat to suffer on the shelves when there's let's say money is scarce. lamb will be the kind of, they might come down to beef or something else, or even chicken. Lamb is one that they might leave. So you have to be very careful how lamb, and that's why markets and all that are very particular or careful um, how they market lamb, actually, to be quite honest. And it does get a good bit of marketing here in Ireland through Board Bia.
Yeah. And would you be able to taste uh, like if it's a blackface sheep, or would you be able to
Well,
tell when?
you'd see lamb or ram. You'd have an idea by looking at it on the plate. Really, it's the
Mm.
size. Really, I like you go into a butcher here, and butcher will often tell you there that the big red lamb chop that attracts the eye, but I'd actually prefer the small one that's gone a bit off color, and so like that's the best. That's the best one. But a hill lamb, the chops are, we call them number nines. So they are smaller, but there's better. I think there's better taste out of them. Nothing wrong with the other type as well, like, but it's just that you can now. It's hard to tell taste wise, really, sometimes. So really, but it's either lamb or ram, one or the other. But you will know it's lamb, but it
Okay.
can be.
Yeah. So just coming around to kind of the nature side of things, Colum, you have been involved in a few agri-environment schemes and groups. You might just tell us your kind of journey onto these and where you started and which ones you were involved in, etc.
Yeah, well, the first, I don't know, was it the agri scheme, but it's the first one back was it 98, 99. There was a destocking on the hills here. And we cut back from a quota of 500 to just short of 300, just to overgraze on certain parts of our hill, not on all the hills, just certain parts of them. And so that was it didn't suit the time because a lot of your flock was taken away, a lot of your potential income was taken away, but you do what at the time what had to be done. So different reps came in. I wouldn't have been in it at the time. Mother would have been in it. Reps was very important. Reps actually was very important. You have different schemes in the glass and all these, right up to your acres now. We won't say too much on that at the moment. We'll probably talk about that. But so we've been in all those schemes. And when I say the destocked scheme, that scheme involved taking your sheep down for 5 months. I think it was 5 months at the time. They came down on the 14th of March from the hills. The hills were completely cleared, and they went up again on the 14th of May, right up again until October, I think it was October. So that was part of that scheme. Then there's different ones, let's say, with Wild Atlantic Nature, the most up-to-date ones, actually more common. The Wild Atlantic Nature one there, the pilot scheme that was launched locally here, where almost 150 farmers signed up to it, just for a pilot scheme, just before acres came in. So that was Wide Atlantic Nature.
And I know you were instrumental in that. So do you want to just take us through what that was about?
Instrumental with a group of farmers. So I'm not saying it was part of a group of farmers, very good farmers actually. There were and it was put to us from the Wide Atlantic Nature project team about this potential pilot scheme for between 70 and 80 farmers on the Nephin range, and if you want to sign up to it, you could or not. And it was just to see how it would work. Let's say with maybe potential looking at how the hill score or your land score, just looking at your field slightly different. Let's say what's under your feet type of thing, as in instead of just looking at it as grass, looking at it as flowers, plants, all that important things in the ground. So it's just we put it they put it to us that they're looking for 70 to 80 farmers, but we put it to them that for this to work you nearly want to have everybody involved in it, because 70 to 80 farmers really in an area, who's picking out who and who's going to go in and who's not going to go in, and Colum Ginnelly's gone in and how come he goes in and we wouldn't give the opportunity to go in. So like you look at it that way, that for this to work you wanted to have all the farmers in, really. And it was mentioned that the project team mentioned that there was no funding for everybody to go in. So we told them to go away and get funding for everything else. So we'll go away and get funding for this, and we will organise. We'll do our best to get farmers. So different eye contact farmers in my own areas, and those other farmers in other areas made a huge effort. Now, I say some farmers made bigger efforts than I did, to be quite honest, very big efforts now, to be quite honest. So I have to just mention that. And so there was nearly 150 farmers signed up to it, and that over the 2 years that brought in or took in involved payments of up to €1 million locally. Now, money got locally in farmers, especially in hill areas like here, is normally spent in these areas. So it's very, very important. Like hill farming in general is very, very important in these areas, like as long as it's maintained. That's one thing I must say, that hill farming is very, very important to this area. So that was the Wild Atlantic Nature scheme. Also at the moment, in the middle of, myself in the middle of just in conjunction with Wild Atlantic Nature, fencing off a section of our own private land, mountain type land, originally commonage, mountain type land, with the just to see will it recover? It's kind of a pinch point where maybe our own sheep congregate to come down, or cattle, or whatever it is. So it's just that we will put a temporary fence up just to see how it will work, just to show will it recover. And so hopefully that's going to start now shortly, into the summer actually. So we'll see going forward how that will work out. That runs right along by the Great Western Greenway. So the Great Western Greenway goes through a section of our land as well. And also that was very important as well, actually. I know greenways can be a touchy subject in special in other areas. But I know with this area ourselves, where the Great Western Greenway was the first national cycle route in Ireland. 2000, I think, or 2010 or 11, it was officially opened by Noel Dempsey, and so it at the time there was nothing else happening, and when the Greenway ran through your land, it involved getting permission from landowners, which wasn't easy. It wasn't easy now, and some landowners wanted and some didn't want it, and there was a lot of detours made around other landowners. And like every landowner, they have a choice. They don't have to. You never be forced into anything. When you own the land, it's yours. You don't have to be forced into anything. But eventually, the Greenway got through, and it's in 2013 alone, I think about 240 something thousand used the Greenway. So that just shows you. We're at the height of recession, and there's nothing else happening, and a lot of people holiday in Ireland, so it was booming at the time. So you see a lot of these greenways are opened all around the country now at the moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think it's a great slow tourism is great for local communities. There's a couple of questions there, and if anyone has any questions for Colum, please write it in your chat box. One is with the Atlantic Nature Project, did you see much results on your land throughout the project, or your knowledge of what you were looking at as well?
Well, the results I seen, like you, I'm only talking for myself, and I mentioned there a few times before, like spraying was a big thing with us. Spraying, everything had to be sprayed. Rushes, like if you turn your back in the morning, there's a rush going to be up behind you, tapping you on the shoulder. That's the type of land we have here. And it's very hard to describe it to, let's say, to people that don't have the type of peaty, boggy land that we have. It's very hard to describe that it's a constant battle with the rush. You're nearly dreaming of them in your sleep, be quite honest here. Or and I won't say weeds, because weeds serve a purpose, sometimes people say in land. So but by eradicating, getting rid of the boom sprayer completely, so that doesn't happen now, we're seeing flowers growing up. And that's what we've seen, flowers that we never took heed of any before. Now, there probably were underneath our feet, we didn't take no heed of them. And that's what I noticed, is that eradicating the sprayer completely, that's where we saw a thing. Your grass looked to be getting better. It's like the old traditional meadows. Now, some people don't like to see that, because intensive farming has to be green, lovely lush grass and all that, heavily fertilizer. But like, you can cut back on your livestock, on your stocking rate, on a land like that. Could just spread it out more often, instead of farming or heavily stocking certain fields, maybe just lightly. So, and that's where I've seen it. We've seen it with the kind of grass sward, it changed. There was a lot of flowers, things we didn't see. Not saying that they're good for producing lambs or anything like that, but that's where we did see it. We did see it. And we also seen a lot more. Your land mightn't look as good, is looking good, but like it's all got to do with the scoring system in acres and in the Wild Atlantic Nature Project. The more flowers you had, more plants, more positive indicators, I would say, that's your payment was higher. And anything that you can get paid for that doesn't involve spending money. Like you don't have to spend money. Like we're cutting back fertilizer, cutting back on the spray, but you're getting paid higher because your scoring was higher. Like it's a no-brainer to me. Like the way I look at it, the more, let's say, the silage ground that we have scored less because that would have got fertilizer, that would have be more intensively farmed. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that scored less, and that's how we looked at it. It did improve it, and it has still improved it. Some people say it might be hungrier for not as much fertilizer, but like it's how you graze them. You'll have enough grass on any field if you just don't overgraze it.
Mm-hmm. So did you have to change your stocking rate further with the programs, or?
Well, no, actually, we still have the stocking rate. That's the thing about it. We still have the same stocking rate, but it's how you stock the fields now. Really, it's how you stock the field. Maybe you can cut back slightly because really, when you have part-time work off, especially in the summer months, it's if your payments are actually okay with acres or whatever scheme you're in, you can actually afford to cut back a small bit, because the reason why farmers are heavily stocked is a lot of the time is to produce. It's produce. The more you have, the more cows you have to milk, the more you produce, the more land you have to grow, tillage, the more you produce. But if I can say if you were told that you get paid money or you get paid or the options there is to get a better payment and cut back on tillage or cut back on dairy, but still get the same money. Say a lot of farmers would look at it and say, well, that's a no-brainer. So that's the way we look at it like that. We're lucky that we have enough land on the 400 acres. So we're enough that we're on the minimum. Do you know what I mean? So we have enough to cover. We have enough to cover everything we have. So we're lucky, but we could go up higher, but you'd be putting yourself under pressure.
And then just another question: how do you manage your rushes?
Lick sprayer. When I say lick sprayer, a lick, and that'll have to change. Some people say you can drain out or dry out fields. You cannot dry out peatland. And peatland, people say you can drain it and you get rid of rushes. You won't get rid of rushes like that. So investing in a lick sprayer, and you can actually doesn't it only touch the top of the rushes. And actually we've let a lot more go. There's areas that we don't touch at all. Let them kind of come up in it. Is some rushes grow out of hand and others don't. There's rushes that don't grow. So that's what we've done. Now you can actually top them, but because of a lot of our land is the old, as I said, the Rundale strips, the old famine ridges around it. It's not some type of land you can top or you can cut. It's the old. Some fields have the old graves in it, going back to famine times. So they're not fields you can, and very uneven. And unless you go in and just root the whole lot up and reclaim it, you're not going to be able to top it. So that's the problem we have. We cannot cut all our land. We're not in a position to be able to top all our land when it's a topper or more. So it's even harder when you have that the weed wiper, as we say ourselves, the weed wiper, but it's only for the very tall rush. We don't bother with that with the very small rush. Something that we have to change now, because really we have to see how going forward, how will we manage that actually, because the boom sprayer is gone completely. And it's just automatic. You've grown up with that, going out and spraying, arms out, and away you go. That's all gone now. And I think it's gone in a lot of places as well. Like,
Yeah, it's amazing. And in fact, you've become a bit of a social media phenomena because you talk about your thistles in the field,
I'm
and
talking about this.
yeah, and how you leave them and stuff. So you might just tell us how you've kind of readdressed your relationship with thistles there, Colum.
Well, that thistle got so big I was afraid to go near it. Actually, it was over 6 foot, I think it was. It was taller than myself. No, it's we don't have fields full of thistles, but there was just one thistle that grew out of hand in a field that we in a small field we have, and I just left it because with the Wild Atlantic Nature Project, okay, with the Wild Atlantic, we got these scorecards out, and on the scorecards with pictures of all the flowers here, positive indicators and negative indicators, and we always looked at a thistle as a bloody nuisance and a negative. It shouldn't be in your land. A lot of people think it still shouldn't be in your land, but to me, it's caused no hassle to me. But it's from the bit of education from the Wild Atlantic Nature Project team. It's a positive indicator in your land. So I said, well, why leave it? We used to love actually running over it, and when you hear the topper chopping it up there, you felt satisfaction going across it, or to get the bell to the stick as you're going by it. We just left that now. That thistle will come up in the summertime and dies away again. So that thistle at the moment, that field, you wouldn't even know there was thistle in it. It's not that that thistle is going to be 5 thistles, 10 thistles, 40 thistles next year, and the whole field is full of thistles all year round. That comes up and it grows in summertime and dies away. So I don't see it being any harm if when it grows, it serves some purpose to the bees or whatever it is. It dies away. It's not like a willow or a tree that grows up in the middle of your field and it keeps going and going. That's our. It's made no difference to me to leave it. So with the bit of teaching, I left it there. And I know it has got a lot of talk. A lot of people have talked about it, saying it shouldn't be there, and what type of farmer is this, and what type of farmer is that. But I know some of them are probably the same farmers that have rushes and brambles growing out over the walls, the same farmers. But anyways, listen, it is what it is, and it, help of God, it'll come up next year, and we'll have a good look at it again when it comes up.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And good feed for, like you say, for the bees and stuff. There's a question here from Eva's Sheridan. Just wondering if the supplement feed given is organic and if there's any interest in keeping sheep for mutton or just for producing lambs.
Um, it's not organic. We will. That's the next step for us to probably to go organic. It's not organic meal, and actually organic meal is twice the price anyway. So unless you're an organic farmer, it defeats the purpose of feeding organic meal to it. We've just feed what you have to feed. One time here we used to feed beet pulp when the sugar factories were they were a big loss to hill sheep farming because the main food that was fed to sheep was pulp, beet pulp, and oats. Main thing. I often carry the 50 kilo bag. My mother put them up my back, and we carry them and feed the hill sheep. There was so much, so the energy was so good in them, especially for hill sheep farmers. It was the best feed you could ever. When them factories closed, that was the death knell because really you had to go over onto more the nuts, the more expensive type feed. We were getting the same amount. We're getting the same feed out of the beet pulp as we are now. Like so, but it's not organic. It's not organic, and we will be going organic. It just there's a bit of work involved in going to with organic. So it's a big change for the likes of ourselves to go organic. So
How does it work with commonages if you're organic and
that's the
your
thing. That's
participants
the,
aren't?
that's the thing. Well, organic commonage is not classed or not counted for in organic payments. So
Okay.
it's not, and it's very hard. But you really privately owned land is like you cannot dictate what happens on a commonage, and you wouldn't either because everyone's entitled to farm the commonage to a commonage. So you can't say that this and that should happen on and that, and I wouldn't say it either because everyone's entitled. When you share in a commonage, you're entitled to farm it. Full stop. But on your own land, you can decide what happens on your own land in relation to like some. It depends how you're set up. Some farms have very little to do to farm organic. We're close to it as we are. Just a bit of a change, but the biggest thing is, as we say, the peaty soil, and we go back to again the rushes grown up. if you have land that you can cut and top, it's no problem going into organic because you can just keep on top of them all the time. You can just keep them cutting them rushes back because they will eventually take over. And what happens, I know some people say there's nothing wrong with a rush. There's nothing wrong with a rush, but if it's the only thing in the field, there is a lot wrong with it because there's no grass for sheep. And rushes will take over. Rushes will take over. So you can dictate what happens on your own land, but on the commons you cannot, and you wouldn't unless a group of farmers came together. But the thing about it is organic payments don't, there's no payments for commonage through organics. So it's really all your lowland, private land or private mountain or anything like that you can get paid for, but not on commonage. And that's if that did change though, if the payments system for organics came in on commonage, you'd see a huge change over. That's what's holding a lot of it, because there would be a better payment, and people would look at it as well. Listen, we could cut back a bit more, and we maybe cut back a bit more. That maybe certain areas may look better, or maybe grass or heathers might grow back on this, and we'll cut back, but we're getting paid. It's all about farmers when the choice of going into different schemes and looking at different schemes. It's what's out of it. They don't look at what's out of it that can go on these year-round holiday. It's what is out of it to make a living, to keep their house ticking over, pay the bills and all that. No farmer wants to do any harm to the environment, but sometimes farming, going back years ago, was done with, there might be shortcuts taken, that the environment, that the nature or environment suffered from. And but no farmer wants to do that. But it's all got to do with making a living. Like going back 20, 30 years ago, nearly 30 years ago, my father was getting as much money for cattle as they're getting now. Now, I don't mean this year, because this year is exceptional for the price of cattle. But like everything else, the costs and everything else has gone up since that. But the prices have all stayed the same. Now, I can't complain this year because the price of cattle, I hear, were very good this year. So we can't complain.
Yeah, I heard that. All right, definitely last year it was the same as the year I was born. My father was saying. So the second part to our question: any interest in keeping sheep for mutton or just for producing lambs?
Well, if there was a market there for mutton, like farmers are willing to diversify, change, and they're very good actually. They're very good. They're very good at listening. Whatever about was taking it on board, we're very good at listening. But if there was a market there for mutton, you'd just be holding them longer. But if you'd be missing out in a year crop, let's say selling by holding for mutton, because you wouldn't be selling a lamb in the year, you'd have to be holding on again, but then you'd be up and running. But it's holding lambs throughout the winter, like it takes a lot. There's a lot of work, especially you would have to, especially the lowland, or let's say the more commercial flock. They would involve, let's say, indoors feeding, all that type of thing, because just the environment here, weather-wise, land, and we've been very high fluke areas for fluke, especially the hills, very high fluke areas. So that's what you're always watching all the time. But if there was a market there for mutton, if anyone can come up in a market for mutton, I guarantee you there's always someone that will supply that market. We would look into it ourselves if it was.
Very good. Will Gabba just ask, what sort of wildlife do you have on the farm, or is this
everything? Everything. Like we're looking out when we look out the window, we're looking right out at the sea, on the sea, and we're looking out, the tide goes out in front of us. But you have everything. You often see otters. We have the foxes, of course. The foxes. Now they are probably one of the biggest threats we have to our lambs, the foxes. And but we've everything. We have you've geese. You have geese on the sea, the lands that are jutting out in the sea at the moment. You have the brent geese, or you have the whatever barnacle or whatever it is. You have them on the land at the moment. Now, one time you'd be keeping them away with all types of streamers and all that, but when you see the fertilizer that they leave after them on the land, once that starts growing, it's the best natural fertilizer you could ever get. But apart from that, you'd have one thing we've noticed is probably the small bird population's got less. Whatever that's from, you don't see as much. One time in your shed, you'd have the small birds that they'd be all over the meal. You don't see that at all now.
Mm.
So whatever is the reason for that, we don't know. I don't know. But that's one thing you would always spot. You'd have the bunties, as we call it, or everything all over beyond the rafters or whatever it is. You don't see that at all now. Only the
Mm.
crows. So
I
that's
think
it.
that's
You'd have a lot of different wildlife like that.
And tell me, just going back to the greenway, you were saying it goes through your land, and I think you said like 200,000 visitors came the first year, or in the
2000,
last.
2013, there was actually about, oh, just over, the figures were, they'd counted on, so just over about 240 something thousand used it. That's coming on and off the Greenway in different places. It's a lot back
Yeah.
since that.
And tell me, how does it affect? Like, does it go straight through? Can you cross over your land? How does it
And
work for you as a farmer?
there's crossing. There was a section there that went through at the very start. It was just that those areas that it didn't continue along the cycle track, so it went up through a mountain, a commonage section. So there was a path made up through commonage as where we're shareholders to let it through. It just to bypass certain areas that maybe if landowners just weren't ready to give permission at the time, or they just had to think about it more. So it bypassed through, and it goes through a section of land we farm, our relations farm, and as well the parks we call it back near Mulranny, and it runs through that, but you can cross it over. You can actually cross over. It's you go from one gate to another. So it's a narrow path through. The cyclists we give permissive access to it, to people to use it, and it's closed for one day a year in February. And so that's the way it is. It's permissive access. So we can access. You can walk along the greenway times, and often our sheep will be grazing on it, or just grazing the side of it when the cyclists be walking by. So it's they love that as well. It's we look at it as it's the safest. When you look at years ago, cycling on the road was dangerous, but it's twice as bad now. It's just the traffic is so. But this is a family cycle. This is a family cycle route, 43 kilometers from Westport to Ackle Island. And when you look and you see the families on cycling that, at the start, it was a hindrance because some people would be coming with dogs and they were letting them loose and they'd be going through your sheep and all that, and you'd be biting the tongue or you'd be letting off a couple of roars. It took a bit of fine tune at the start, but when you see the families, let's say last weekend now, Patrick's weekend there now, when you see the family parents cycling and the families with them or the kids with them on the bike, that's when you see it's well worth it. That's when you see it. And I advise anyone that any places or any places that there is greenways mooted or people deciding on it, just don't let's say put the thumbs down straight away. Just look into it, because when a greenway like that, when the amount of people goes through there, it's up to farmers or individual landowners to maybe look at different business opportunities for it. Now, I'm lucky in one way myself that I have minibuses, so I do a bit of private hire work myself just for the summer months. The winter months, nothing happens because I don't do school runs or nothing like that. So just for the summer months, I get a bit of work from it. Let's say people cycling one way and not wanting to go back, and they've hired bikes and they might just want a taxi back or something like that. So I benefit from it. I know there's other landowners that don't. So that's the way you look at it that way. But you look at it favorably. That took a lot of persuasion from different landowners from all the way from Westport to Ackle Island. So there's a lot of people involved there. A lot of people had to do a lot of work there to get that through in different places. A lot of council engineers did a lot of persuasion, spent a lot of time in our house and a lot of other houses along the route to get permission and get people on board at the time like that. So, and it's a good thing. But I know it when it goes through your own land or any land like that. Yeah, you get used to it. You don't take no heed of it then at the time.
Yeah, it can make it worth it. And I suppose as part of that, because you are in a taxi driver, you're taxi driving, it's kind of how nice is it? Do you find it kind of nice to meet some of the people that have gone past your land or appreciating your land or
Yeah, well, you do.
advice?
Well, you do, and actually, for some months you often get groups tours. Let's say, mostly American. I do a bit for with American people, and the tours that you do, The American people, I do find sometimes they're more interested in the sheep than we are ourselves. When they go along the road, or you're bringing them around and they're asking all the questions, and there are things that come automatically to you, and the flowers, plants, and all that, and they're very intrigued with this, and so that's the other thing with farming, that when you're there's I'm not sure there are many full-time farmers. Everyone has a little bit of a sidekick just to take over. You need that, because I would always say the money you make from farming you put into the buses, or the money you make from buses you put into the farm. That's the way. That's the way I put it. But like that's it. So everyone has maybe a part-time or a job, maybe something in farming. You see that. I hope that doesn't change that that farming will be becoming not a thing of the past, but let's say hill sheep farming, that it won't go. That's one thing to always be fearful of it going here, because you're looking around and you're just wondering who's the next generation coming after you. Are they going to take on what you're doing here? Sometimes the old ways of farming here, we still have it, but like it's up to the next generation to maybe to change it, or to bring new ideas into it. Like, because if they're going with if they're looking at the way we do it, they'll be saying, no, not a hope in hell am I going to take that on. But like that's the next generation to decide there.
Yeah, interesting. And I suppose having something like tourism on the sideline does allow other opportunities as well.
Well, it is, because like we're on the main road between Westport and Achill Island, and like Westport, when you look at Westport is the engine that and it's up to every other village or town around Westport to take advantage of the Westport, because Westport is the big engine really for tourism. Like, you can't go to the best place to live in Ireland. My wife's from Westport, and she'll tell me that best place
regularly.
Yeah, regularly, daily. But so when you have something like Westport on your doorstep, tourism spreads out, and you look at Achill Island as well. When you look at Achill Island, fabulous. So you have those two things. We're between Westport and Achill Island. You have those two fantastic things. One vibrant town, the other place, Achill Island, fantastic scenery, best beaches in well, both Achill or Keem, best beaches you'll get on Achill Island, and that's there's no comparison. So you have tourism, so it helps us. But you could be a farmer in other parts of the country that don't have that opportunity. Could be a farmer like myself, but don't have the opportunity to make an off-farm income from it. So we're lucky here in one way. And that's as long as that can continue.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's down to the farming community as well, that you've enabled it to happen. Do you know what I mean? Between the different schemes and the greenways, and you've obviously come together as a community and that helps.
Well, you often heard farmers will keep the local shop open, to keep the local pub, the local school, because they're living in the area. It's like there can be a lot of red tape and restrictions with trying to live in the countryside, and a bit of a push to live in the towns or in the major cities. But like, once you lose the farmer from the countryside, or from people living in the countryside closes down. It's farmers like us that are keeping it open, if you know what I mean. It's farm, and not everyone is farming, but when you're living in the countryside and you're making an effort to live in the countryside, you are keeping the countryside open, as in shops, whatever it is, schools, whatever. You are keeping them taken over. Like, that's the way. The red tape is the big thing. To cut back a small bit on red tape, that should be a big thing in farming. Like, there's a lot of red tape in farming, like, but it's warranted somehow. We have a very good record, or very good, our meat, milk, everything is very well looked upon abroad.
Received, yeah, absolutely. Mary Cannon's asked, what's your timeline for going organic?
Probably, we have talked about it already with our advisor. If we can do it this year, we will, but definitely next year.
And is it the same? It takes how long does it take a hill farm to convert? Is it the?
It's not too. It's nearly straight away. Like, when you're looking at the way we farm now at the moment, hill farming, we're nearly organic. The only thing we're changing is let's say double the retention of, let's say, dosing or whatever it is, that double the retention on that, organic meal, organic hay. There's a lot of things like that. And when you're an organic farmer, and if you're putting your own hay, well, that covers you. But there's a bit of change. There's a bit of change, but like you can start going organic straight away if you just there's a bit of work in it, but like it's just getting the mindset really first.
Yeah.
But the payments are always are good as well. That's one thing that would convert you over.
Yeah, it's helpful. Claire Lance has asked, I've been reading about the hen harrier and other upland birds threatened with extinction. Have any birds been found on your farm that you know of, Colum?
Well, let's say in the 1999 destocking of the Nephin Beg mountain range, the main reason why that was the destocking was there was protection of the red grouse. Now, I hadn't seen red grouse myself on the hill like that. I know other farmers would say they would and all that, but after that destocking, destocking, the sheep were down for the winter months, and which put a lot of pressure on the lowland for us. A lot of work involved because all those hill sheep had to be fed when they came down from the hills. Those sheep had to be fed. Not changing away from what birds and things, but that hill flock, to keep a hill flock, they have to be nearly living on the hill all the time. Because if they get a taste of the lowland grass or supplement food meal, you will change over. It's like open a pack of biscuits and all of a sudden say, "Oh, these are nicer than eating something than fruit." And that's the way it was with them. The hill farm, the hill sheep were nearly ruined actually through that destocking. I know I'm not saying it wasn't a good thing, but it was there. It was very, very hard to get the sheep back up onto the hills again because they wanted to come down because they got a lot of softness down in winter months. But the main reason why that destocking came in was protection of the red grouse. And we're just saying, well, who's seen a red grouse? But I know myself, years after that, when you'd be walking around up your sheep on the hill, there the adult female, it's just shoot up in front of you and fly off maybe 30 or 40 yards and down again. And she was taking away from her young. So it did work, actually. We did start to see more red grouse on the hills. So hopefully going forward, we'll see more.
Interesting, yeah. Mary Can has also asked, have you trained sheepdogs for the hill sheep?
Who trains them, is it?
No, do you train them? Do you have trained?
Yes, we train our own. We 2 sheepdogs. We train our own because we have to train them to the type of system we have, and also to the, as well as farming, as working on the hills, they're working on the lowland for us. And also when our dogs now, when they go into the field, they actually know where they're going. We have to nearly call them back because they're practically going around the field, nearly going to put out the sheep for you. So we train them to our own routine, also to the type of language that we do, some whistle, but also there can be a lot of foul language used at times.
Fair enough.
It's like the neighbour we had that had a dog called Brandy, and used to often hear on the hill during the day him shouting "Brandy, Brandy, Brandy." The dog is calling. So it's so we train them ourselves. We train them ourselves to farming. You need a good, strong dog for the hill.
Okay.
Very strong dog, and one dog is not enough. You need multiple dogs, really. So
yeah, it's amazing talent. Claire Lance has asked, what plant species have recovered in areas where changes were made to destocking?
Plant species, a bit of heather. The heather we see coming back. The heather we see it'll take years to come back, but you see a bit of the heather come back. There's a lot of the mosses. A lot of our peaty land would have a lot of sphagnum mosses and all these mosses, and lots of different types of heathers. The ling heather, the bell heather, all these, we'd often be seeing them, but we wouldn't take any heed of them. We always thought heather was heather, but there's different types of it. But everything will recover. Lots of flowers or plants will come back they mightn't be there for years, but they'll come back eventually.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it's I think it's incredible kind of just even getting that amount of farmers involved in a scheme. And listen, Colum, I know you have a bit of a cold, so we will let you
Yeah,
off a
no,
bit
it's all right.
early
So I'm
here.
managing here. We're
No,
getting,
you're
we're
doing
doing
very
okay.
well. And I think you've been very generous with your time and sharing us the story of your hill, and it sounds beautiful. So I look forward to being one of those families cycling through it in due course. Before we go, is there anything when you think about the legacy of what you're leaving to your children on your farm, is there anything that kind of stands out for you?
Well, do you know what? You're carrying on a tradition that was there in front of you. I see the way my father worked on it and probably killed himself really working on it, to be quite honest. You automatically go into that routine yourself, and going forward, you just say to yourself, really, as long as you'd like for them to continue it on, sorry, excuse me, it won't be the same as the way I'm doing, because farming is going to be changing. Like we won't be farming the intensive way that we're always going to be farming. The younger generation are going to have an off-farm job and maybe checking over, keeping the farm going for the weekends. You can see a lot more maybe animals housed the winter months, just to make it easier for, let's say, them coming home for work and maybe being able to access or to look after the sheep, but just that we can continue it on. Also, just to make sure that the hill farming is that it continues. I know it gets a lot of slate, especially along our own hills here, the Nephin Beg mountain range. Like we can farm and look after the environment at the same time. So that's the most important thing. Like that, it's as long as the hill farm, because the hill farming is our bread and butter. And I know we have the lowland flock, but the hill farming has been our bread and butter for years. And as long as we can still continue to farm that, that's the most important thing. So I'm not sure who'd want to go up on it all the time because the work that's involved with it. But do you know what? If it's in your blood, sometimes we mightn't like to do things, but when you start doing them, then you kind of get to like it. And you are out there, you are out there by yourself at times, and you have but I know myself, it's nice when you're out farming during the day by yourself and talking to the dogs. I'm not talking back, but that you have the bus side then that you can go and you can talk to people and talk to the Americans or whoever they are, the locals or the visitors from whatever part of the country here that are cycling the greenway, and you'll be talking to them, they'll be asking you questions. You have that from one to the other.
Brilliant, brilliant. Listen, Colum, thank you for your time. Thanks for sharing with us today. So if anyone missed any of tonight, it will be on our YouTube channel by tomorrow. And if you'd like to join us for our next Q&A, it will be on the 18th of April at 8 p.m. with Ken Gill, who is a beef farmer in County Offaly. So you can just register through our website as usual. 15th of April, sorry. So it'll be the third Tuesday of the month. And otherwise, thank you so much, Colum, and hopefully we'll have a farm walk on your land in the summer.
Yeah,
That's the
hopefully,
plan.
And thanks very much to yourself and for all you've done, especially Farm for Nature and for the award that received last October. A lovely weekend down in Kinvara. So anyone that does get nominated or anything like that for it, listen, it's accepted because it's a brilliant thing, and I'm telling you, you learn a lot from it. And I've learned a lot myself from it. We think we know it all, but we don't. We're still learning. Every day is a learning day. So that's what I'd say. It's farming, especially farming for nature and wild Atlantic nature. I think that you see nature in, just go along with it.
Sign up quick. Listen, you're very good. Okay,
Thanks
take
very
care.
much.